Okay, hi everyone. Welcome back to our 2023 Politics in Action series. My name is Sonja van Dichelen and I'm Deputy Director of the Sydney Southeast Asia Centre here at the University of Sydney. Now, Politics in Action is a flagship event of the Sydney Southeast Asia Centre where we give political updates from the region. Yesterday, we covered Singapore, Cambodia, and Indonesia. Earlier today, we focused on Thailand, and this session will give an update on Timor-Leste, followed by our last session on the Philippines later today. Now, before I introduce our speaker, I'd like to acknowledge and pay respect to the traditional owners of the land on which we are zooming our session in, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. It is upon their ancestral lands that the University of Sydney is built, and we pay our respects to those who have cared and continue to care for country. Now, I'm thrilled to be introducing to you João de Cruz Cardoso, a political expert based in Delhi and a graduate from the University of Hawaii and the University of Illinois. He contributed immensely to the political discourse of Timor-Leste through his incisive writing and acute analysis, and we're very happy to have him here today. Now, the rundown is that João will have 20 minutes to give an overview of the political situation in Timor-Leste. We will then have about 10 minutes to ask questions, which you can do via the Q&A function. Feel free to place your questions throughout the session, and I will collect the questions for discussion. We will also be live streaming the event on Facebook, so you can follow the event there if you encounter any issues with Zoom. Now, please, João, the floor is yours.
Hello, good morning from Timor-Leste. Thank you for the opportunity to participate in Politics in Action Forum 2023 to present about politics and development in Timor-Leste. Due to limited time, I will directly go to the presentation. So my presentation today, I will provide a brief history of Timor-Leste that shaped politics in the country, an overview of the current political and development of Timor-Leste, and what are the priorities in the coming years. So for many of you who follow the history of Timor-Leste, it used to be a Portuguese colony for more than 400 years. So due to Carnation Revolution in the 1970s, opened the path for many colonies, including Timor-Leste, to get independence. However, unfortunately for Timor-Leste at the time, there was a diverging idea among the Timorese, which resulted in the formations of five political parties at the time, including Fretilin, that wanted an independent Timor. Now, these diverging ideas resulted in the internal conflict, among many other reasons, contributed to the invasion or allowed the opportunity for Indonesia to invade the country. Now, Fretilin then started the struggle for independence. And over time, this independence movement took shape in three fronts, involving the armed front, the clandestine front that involved the civilians, and also the diplomatic front, including the exiled Timorese, to gain international support for independence movement. They succeeded because in 1999, through referendum, 78% of the Timorese people chose independence. And that's why in 2002, Timor-Leste restored its independence. Restorations because Fretilin already declared independence in 1975. Now, this independence movement is very important because it shapes leaderships and political parties today. Now, as you know, all these leaders now somewhat involved in this the movement. So today, people refer to there is narrative of old and young generations of leaders. The old leaders refer to those we call the founding fathers who initiated the struggles in independent movement, and the young generations loosely interpreted as those coming after them. Now, this year, specifically on the 21st May, Timor-Leste is going to hold its sixth parliamentary election, and 17 political parties will compete. But I'm only going to focus on the 5 political parties because they have been shaping the political landscape in the last 5 years, and probably in the next 5 years as well. So these 5 political parties are Fretilin and CNRT. They have the majority seats in the parliament. Together, they have 44 seats. Meanwhile, the rest are shared by PLP, CONT'd, and PD. I would like to mention here that most of these political parties are led by the figures leading the independence movement. Now, I would like to briefly explain about what happened in the last 5 years. And this is why the shift in the government and also political situation in the country. In 2017, Fretilin won the elections and formed a minority government with Democratic Party. However, this government didn't last because the program was not approved in the parliament. So, considering these situations, the president of the Republic at the time, President Francisco Guterres Luolo, called for an early election. And in that early election, CNRT, PLP, and CONT'd formed a coalition and won the election. And they formed what now referred to as the 8th constitutional government. But in 2019, the budget proposal for 2022 was not approved in the national parliament. So this 8th constitutional government was led by Taur Matanruak from PLP. One of the reasons why the budget was not approved because CNRT refused to support the budget. So because of this situation, the Prime Minister sent his resignation letter to the president, but was not accepted. While this situation was taking place, the COVID-19 pandemic hit among the natural disasters. So there was a requirement for a functioning government administration. So that allowed the opportunity for the 8th constitutional government to continue. And then Fretilin replaced CNRT to support the government. And this is why formation of new coalitions and this 8th constitutional government continues until today. So regardless of the analysis, the upcoming election will still be dominated by these 2 big political parties, Fretilin and CNRT. So the scenarios of the government for the next government will still be involved these 2 parties, either one of them. Especially now, there is this current coalition has an understanding to form the government should they earn the majority seats in the parliament. Meanwhile, CNRT also has the opportunity to form the government should they win the upcoming election. Now, probably they will be forming the government with Democratic Party or the emerging new political parties, the Uzverdis, the Green Party, that has gained a lot of momentum, especially among the youth. Meanwhile, same as the previous elections, this current election is still dominated by the oil resources in terms of how to develop the Greater Sunrise and how to bring the pipeline to the country. Since the independence, Timor-Leste experienced a little bit of a brief conflict from 2006 to 2008. But since then, it has enjoyed political stability. And this has allowed the opportunity for development to take place. And we can, this is self-evident through the progress achieved in the key sectors, such as in education, water and electricity, as well as all this development infrastructure in the transportation sector with all the national roads, ports and airports are being constructed. And just want to give you all a bit of background about development in the country. Development in the last 10 to 12 years has been guided by what we call the Strategic Development Plan 2011 to 2030. Now, this SDP, what we refer to as SDP, aims to bring Timor-Leste to an upper middle income country by 2030. However, a recent evaluation report published in 2021 shows that most of the targets to be achieved have not been fully implemented. So low implementation rate. And the report also highlights that one of the challenge, including political indecisions and interference. So that's why there is low implementations of the strategic development plan. So considering these whole situations, Timor-Leste continued to face social and economic issues, which include poverty. Based on the latest information, 42% of Timorese still live below the poverty line. And then there is also ongoing issues with unemployment, especially among the youth, who makes a large proportion of the Timorese populations, because about 12% unemployment rate. And there is also constant issues about lack of economic diversifications, especially in the productive sectors such as agriculture and tourism that have a lot of potentials. And especially this lack of economic diversification contributes to lack of development in the rural areas. Leads to urban-rural gaps. This means that all the economic activities are concentrated in the urban centers or capital cities. Mind you, this is referring to at least 75% of Timor-Leste population live in the rural areas. And also agriculture sectors accounts for about 80% of employment in the country. So that's why it contributes to a lack of development in the rural areas. Also, there is an issue of continuous dependency on oil resources. Timor-Leste's economy is unique in a sense that it is driven by the government expenditure. And over the last 10, 15 years, the state budget has been coming from oil revenues, and 86% of it. So it really depends on the oil resources. So in terms of challenges that I just mentioned previously, I'm only going to focus on the programs or electoral commitments proposed by two large political parties, because they will still somewhat form the government in these upcoming elections, because they will still have a lot of majority seats in the parliament. Now, overall, these two political parties still propose the same programs to create jobs, to diversify the economy, to promote infrastructure, and also to address poverty through subsidies and all that. So, but this is not new. It has been lauded, mentioned over the last 3 elections at least, that the government will continue to diversify the economy, to create jobs. But of course, the challenges remain. Considering situations, what are the priorities to take in the upcoming elections and also in the coming years? Considering that Timor-Leste's economy is driven by government expenditure, the state budget is very important, and political parties must realize that the state budget can become a tool to diversify the economy of the country. And this means that the state budget must reflect this priority in terms of the proportion of the allocation must be a little bit bigger compared to others. And that set of priorities means the budget allocations to the productive sectors such as agriculture and tourism must be significant. Secondly, political parties also must realize that the best approach to development is driven from within. This means that it should understand its own needs, its own weaknesses, and invest in the key sectors such as education and health to actually prepare the conditions prepare the conditions for the economic activities to take place. And it also helps us to strengthen the human resources to maximize the opportunities that are available for us. Now, Timor-Leste is also pushing to join regional blocs such as ASEAN, but this should be complementary, but the main driver of development should be the Timor-Leste itself. Also, during this political campaign, there is an observation that most of the political parties discuss about spending money. It means that they are going to build this, they are going to, such as, let's say, affordable housing, they are going to provide more subsidies, but there is less discussions about where are the alternative sources of revenues coming from, how to diversify the economy, and how to move away from dependency on oil resources. This is a discussion that should be mainly looked for in the political discourse. Now, another one is that political parties must realize that they must contribute to the nation building in a sense that to instill a sense of common purpose and directions, because at least the division between these two political parties is widening, and which resulted in the politizations of public administrations. So it is important for the political parties to instill the concept that once they form the government, they will transform into state. And when they become a state, their main responsibility is to respond to the need of the people. And this will ensure that the state, the government will gain trust from the people, particularly investing in the key sectors, infrastructures that actually meet the need of the people and address the challenges that I just mentioned previously. And with that, I will close this presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Zhao, for your analysis of the political situation in Timor-Leste. It's encouraging to see that there are significant achievements in terms of development, but it looks like there's still a lot of work that needs to be done, and politics seems to be crucial to lead the way here. So as we're waiting for questions to come, I did wanted to pose one to you. So Zhao, I was wondering whether you would be able to expand a bit more on how the resource of oil feeds into the political discussions for the main parties involved. And yeah, the flip side of that question is, you know, what would be some of the non-oil sectors that could thrive when given enough investment? So yeah, they're the two sides of the questions.
Yes, thank you for the questions. It is Timor-Leste is fortunate that it has oil resources, but now the vision for the future is also limited by the oil resources. So now the development of the country is constrained to the development of the oil resources. And this is why the promise of what we call, I will refer to, is the fantasy of development of the future in the future is depending on whether or not we bring the pipeline to Timor-Leste. And so this idea has been solved for people, and that is why if any political parties say otherwise, they will definitely lose the election. And that is why the discourse of these oil resources and how to bring the pipeline here is very crucial for many of these political parties. Now, I would like to mention here that the questions of dependency on oil resources for me is not new, but what question that we should ask now is how to use the money that we have to develop the non-oil sectors. I think this is the question that should be asked. And this is why I mentioned about the state budget as a tool to diversify the economy, because the rationale for the state budget has been somewhat misunderstood, because the rationale has been like this. So the ceiling of the state budget is determined or by, if let's say if we use withdraw 2 to 3 billions, then the petroleum fund will run out by this year, let's say. But and this is the problem. So if we start to identify, let's say we want to develop agriculture sectors, let's see what do we want to what do we want agriculture sector to produce in the next 20 years? What kind of revenues it should generate? And based on that, we start to identify what are the potentials. Can we expand this? What resources does it need? How much money does it need every year? And that's how we should allocate the budget. So the long-term goal is that the petroleum funds should not only be the only revenues for the country, but all these other productive sectors should contribute. And this should be the long-term goal.
Great. Thanks for that explanation, Joe. I read your article for Mandela, and where you wrote about the conditions, especially for young people in the country, and in terms of demography, the young people are the biggest demographic group in Timor-Leste at the moment. How do the political parties engage the younger generation, who often are bearing the frustration of unemployment?
Yes. I mentioned about the Us Verdes, the Green Party that is emerging. And one of their main slogan for this campaign is fight against unemployment, creating jobs. And they have gained a lot of momentum from the youth. But unfortunately, one of its strategy is to send young people to overseas to get job. And I think over the years, the government has worked together, let's say with Australia, with South Korea, to send the young people. In short term, it is a good strategy, because this is also contribute to increase the unemployment rate. But for long term, we should create conditions in the country. The young people should be able to dream that they can have a better life in their own country. They should not dream that their future lies somewhere else, lies in 1,000 miles away. And I think that is why the discussion has been improving the agriculture sectors, because that could employ a lot of jobs, and especially these young people who go to Australia to get jobs, they can come back and have the place to apply the skills that they already gained there. Otherwise, let's say if you have people working in South Korea, they come back in 5 years, and they will have no opportunity to apply all those skills that they have gained, and the work culture that they have gained in their respected place of work. And this is the issue that the country should address.
Great, thanks, Zhao. We've got several questions in the Q&A. The first one from Pione. Recently, I saw on Facebook that CNRT was reintegrating some veterans to Fretilin. Can you give us elaboration on this in relation to the elections? I'll also ask the other questions so that you can see which one you want to answer first. Is that okay, Zhao?
Okay. Sorry, I couldn't hear. CNRT was saying veterans, what?
So Pione says that recently I saw on Facebook that CNRT was reintegrating, in quotation marks, some veterans to Fretilin. Can you give us an elaboration on this in relation to the elections? Okay. Another question comes from Margaret Spencer. What role are multinationals and international aid providers, especially Australia, in influencing this election and politics at large? And I have another one. Can you comment on gender equality and representation in Timor-Leste at present, especially in politics? It seems like politics is heavily dominated by men. Are there any rising women political leaders emerging in Timor-Leste?
Okay. I'm not sure if I get what the actual meaning of this CNRT reintegrating the veterans, but I would like to point out here that all the political parties here involve veterans because they have a lot of influence on gaining votes. Because the sentiments and especially the emotional ties with the struggle and the figures who lead the struggle are still there. And that is why having veterans on your side will give you an advantage. Now about so it's not only CNRT, but also Fretilin, PLP. Mind you, PLP is led by Mr. Taur Matanruak, who was also a leading figure in the struggle. And then CNRT is led by Mr. Shanana Guzmão, and we all know who he is. And also Fretilin now is led by Mr. Maria Alcatiri, Francisco Guterres, and also General Lere. So they are all veteran figures. So about these 8 providers, I am not sure if influencing is the right word, but I also think that the 8 providers should look at what are the priorities of the, let's say, of the political parties in terms of when they form the government, especially addressing the pressing needs such as unemployment, poverty, and also improve the human resources. And I think this is the message that I think all the political parties deliver, in a sense that the development should be centralized in the human capitals. So it doesn't matter how much resources you have if you don't have the people to actually maximize the benefits of it. You have problems. I think about gender equality. There has been discussions about this, but I think politically, Timor-Leste has done quite well, especially women participation in politics. Now, I'm not. I don't have like an in-depth knowledge to discuss about whether or not quantity should exceed the quality. But in politics, I think that quality should exceed the quantity. And it should not be about a gender issue. It should be about figures that can actually bring the country forward rather than addressing who or what gender should become the leaders. Everyone, including the women, the LGBTI community, if they are capable, if the people believe that they can bring this country forward, then everyone deserves the chance.
That might be a good point to wrap up our session. Thank you so much, Zhao, for your excellent presentation. And thank you all for joining us. And I hope you get a chance to attend our last session on the Philippines, which will start shortly at 1:15 p.m. sharp. So thank you again, Zhao. And thank you everyone for joining. Bye, everyone.